agree if I said that beautiful things can make you happy?
Yeah. Yes.
Sometimes.
Sometimes. Okay.
Actually.
So I think true beauty definitely can make you happy. God makes beauty attractive to us so that we want to choose it. What are some things you guys find that are beautiful?
My cat.
Your cat?
Yes.
Great.
Utterly destroying human life.
Yeah.
Yes, that is a beautiful moment.
Delicious.
Okay. Nature.
My wife.
Stars. Stars. Okay, cool. Those are all really great examples, mostly, of what beauty is. So Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI often spoke of the pressing need of our time to be struck and overcome by the beauty of Christ. Beauty can be extremely captivating to people of all walks of life, Christians, Buddhists, agnostics, etc. It does not matter what you believe to be attracted to beauty, but ugliness can sometimes look beautiful. So, but we can know it is a lie or it's just bad. We experience this often in our culture today. It might be music that has a really good melody or a really cool sound, but the lyrics may degrade women or be filled with profanities, which are both morally bad. A beautiful actress or a handsome actor may be starring in a movie you want to see, but there may be a sex scene that promotes pornography and sex outside of marriage. Or you may go to an art gallery and see some really amazing and talented art, but the message may encourage racism or hate. We need to be careful about the art we consume and create. We need to help make, consume, and promote art that is beautiful, but also morally good and speaks a message of truth. That art can bring us closer to God. I want you all to think about a time when you experienced something that was truly beautiful in the natural world. Maybe it was a sunrise at the beach, or an amazing view from the peak of a mountain, or a garden in full bloom. Or maybe holding a little baby that smiled for you, or experiencing the love and care of a person who is truly kind and beautiful inside and out. Do those moments and experiences bring you joy and peace? So those experiences are all God's artwork as our creator. These are times that He is inviting us to deepen our relationship with Him. It's a chance for us to experience His presence in intense colors, warm sunlight, or in the face of a child or loved one. As His creation, we are called to create as well. Some are better than others, and that's totally okay, because we all have different gifts that were given and meant to share with others. Creators are called to imitate God as He created us in His image and likeness. And God is beauty and love. So the church is actually a really big supporter of the arts. In 313 AD, Constantine the Great issued the Edict of Milan, which made Christianity legal. So public worship was allowed, which increased the need for Catholic art in churches, monuments, sculptures, frescoes, mosaics, and paintings. Most people couldn't read, so art was really important to tell the stories of the Bible. It allowed people to pray, meditate, and talk with Jesus, Mary, and the saints, and they could actually see something that represented them, instead of trying to just imagine them. It also helped people have something to focus on in Mass or at home. Visuals are a really helpful reminder to pray throughout your day. Art that became really popular in the church were icons. So this is like the very first thing that we have that comes up. They always depict Jesus, Mary, or the saints, typically. And this one is actually one of the oldest ones that like today that we know of Christ. And he's shown here, like his face is two different sides, and that's done intentionally to portray the New Testament and Old Testament, as well as God being both human and divine. And these were like really good for people. Like they said, icons were a lot of times a negative connotation because it was like, oh, but they're worshiping this thing over God. But these weren't for that. These were so that people could imagine what God might look like. Because not everybody knew Jesus, especially 300 years after his death. They knew him spiritually, but not in a physical manner. So this was just a way to be able to talk to someone, imagine who they were talking to. And they always had a lot of symbolism in them. So it was really easy to know who it was by, like, for saints. They might be carrying something specific. These are more icons that came about in the Renaissance of Mary and Jesus. I'm gonna go a little bit into like art itself, but also why it's important. And in these, the Renaissance brought upon this huge, big boom of art in the Catholic Church, and it told stories of the Bible, and it like helped people see, like, visualize the Bible, and know what was important. So you can see that Mary and Jesus are really, really big compared to everyone else in the picture, and that's because it was called hierarchy of scale, and it's to know that they're the subject, they're the most important thing in this painting, they're holy, and we are to give our attention to them. And again, like, even Jesus as a baby is just huge, but again, it's because he's God, like, he's bigger than all of us. But these are just typical icons, and they influence a lot of art in the Catholic Church. So this is actually one of my favorite. I don't know if you'd really call this an icon because it's influenced by icons, but it is, again, bringing that symbolism in. It's knowing to help you know who it is in the photo or in the picture. You guys can tell this is probably Mary and Jesus surrounded by other saints. And the reason why this is one of my favorites is because it is by Sandro Botticelli, and it's round, which is really uncommon. But the reason it's round is because it's often a gift in marriage, and the circle is a sign of fertility, as well as the pomegranate, which is what Jesus is holding. And it was to wish fertility for your marriage, which is what basically marriage was 100% for in that time period. So let me get back to this really quick. I was talking about the Renaissance, and I'm sure you guys have heard about this in school. It was like the 14th, 15th, 16th centuries. And it was a time of new technology, better design, craft, and skill and talent in the art world. And it pertained to architecture, sculpture, paintings, and more. And this was a time that we know today as the Ninja Turtles, like Michelangelo, Leonardo, Raphael, and Donatello. Those are like 4 really big artists at the time, but there were also artists like Botticelli, Caravaggio, Titian, Ghiberti, Fra Angelico, and Brunelleschi, just to name a fair few. And most of them had a big impact on the Catholic Church. And I'll go into others here. This was Fra Angelico. Again, this is the Enunciation, so it's like a story of the Bible for people to like put themselves there and see what Mary could see. And like they have over here the Garden of Adam and Eve to represent that Mary is the new Eve, and this is the New Testament. And it's just all of these allegories and everything that helps people combine and see the really like deep theology, but in a way that they can understand. This was actually one of my favorite ones because was really common to do a triptych, and what this was is someone commissioned, so in a very wealthy family in the Renaissance. They worked for the Medici family, actually, the Portinaris. And they were actually pictured in the painting because it's really common in that time. So this was the female of the house and the male of the house and their children. They're still smaller because they're not as important as the subject. They are important enough because they paid for it. So they were painted in the painting. And so the Renaissance was just a time that like Christianity was really, really it was dominating the world and being all this influence. And so it was really like a big deal if you had, you could influence the church and donate your money. So this is actually for a hospital. All the hospitals at the time were run by the Catholic Church, so it's still like giving your money to the church. And at that time, it was seen as like you'd have better standing with God if you were to give your money to the church. And like, yes, it's good to give your treasure to God, but you still have to do your works and your actions and that stuff. So that's like something to take into consideration. They didn't really totally get that at that time, but it still helped the church so much, and art in general. And the reason I really like this piece is because it is filled with symbolism, and to know like all these little tiny details. Like for example, Jesus is laying on the ground. And that is to symbolize that he came to this world poor. He came to be like the common people. He also is laying next to, they have the wheat here to symbolize that he is the body of Christ and he is the bread of life. They have like the flowers to symbolize different, they're different colors. They symbolize like, it's hard to see because purple was meant to be royalty, but purple was a hard color to come by in the Renaissance, so it's depicted as dark blue, but that's a symbol of royalty. And then these are supposed to be carnations in here. There's like 7 of them, and they're red to signify Jesus' blood. The white is to symbolize Mary's purity, and just so many different things that are going on in this. And I won't get into too many details because I'm nerding out really a lot because this is just my thing. But again, it's just this art like this influences so much of art throughout the ages. And I just wanted to really quick throw up Leonardo, as you guys have heard of him, the Last Supper, his famous painting. This one's actually one of his lesser famous versions of it. This is a fresco, and I'm sure you guys have all seen his painting. What? Yeah, he's one of the Ninja Turtles. This one is in a monastery. I forget what it's called, but it's in a monastery.
I was in Peru for the summer, so I did see some of these paintings.
Yeah, you probably saw that one.
Yeah, I should.
Yeah.
Which one's the purple one?
What? I don't have one of Donatello's works up here because he is a sculpturist, and his sculptures aren't as well known to our culture. So I didn't throw them up. Like I know them because what I studied. Raphael, he's one of my favorites. So this one's really cool. It's the Madonna with Jesus and Saint John. Yeah, and you can tell because he's wearing a hair shirt. He's carrying Jesus' cross for him because he's going to be a martyr as well. And then this is I think this is Heaven and Earth. What Heaven and Earth will look like. And this is just a good segue into Michelangelo. So Michelangelo did a lot for the church. He was actually really hard to get along with, and was very conceited. He's liked to think of himself as a god. So his favorite medium was actually sculpture. So the Pietà, that's his. And he, again, likened himself to God because sculpture was the closest thing to God because you formed humans, even though he could not breathe life into his statues. But anyways, I bring him up because he, again, did so much for the church at the time. The Pope commissioned him. They did the St. Peters Basilica was actually there, and it was kind of in disarray, so they scrapped it and just built a new one. This is the Sistine Chapel. I know you guys have all heard of that. You have a question?
Oh, just the super famous Adam and God.
Yes, the super famous picture of Adam and God. This is actually like 15 feet big, and like when you're there, it looks so much bigger when you're there. I've been there. It's pretty amazing. But it looks. You're not allowed to.
I
So
did when I was over there.
Yeah, a lot of people did, but I did not because I understood why. And it's a chapel, so you need to respect the chapel.
Yeah,
Come on.
This is the most private chapel.
Yeah.
But it's still a pretty big chapel because it fits the entire concave, so all the cardinals. But anyways, I did want to show this just because it has so much in it. Again, stories of the Bible to tell the people. I wanted to bring up St. Peters Basilica and another church because again, architecture was really important too. Everything in the church, outside the church, was art. It was all to glorify God. It was all to bring your eyes up. So this is the outside. It's one of the biggest churches I've ever been in. I don't know if there's a bigger one. It might be the biggest, but it's absolutely huge. This is kind of what you see when you come in. Like this thing right here is actually 96 feet tall. So that's just the size of the church. Like you can see, it's huge. When I walked into St. Peter's Basilica, I felt so small. And I think that's done intentionally for us to realize that God is so much bigger than we are. And to realize that you are important, but God is important for everybody. And He is what we need to look up to. So they build these churches really tall, really big, so that your eyes are drawn up. Your eyes are drawn to heaven. And like I said, everything in the church is art in there. So it wasn't just, hey, we're gonna throw all this money at it because we can. It was like, God is king. We're gonna treat Him like He's a king. And it's separate from the world. So we're in this place and He's invited us. We're invited to be part of the kingdom. And we offer our riches, we offer our worship to the highest place in our lives. So I know it seems, a lot of people other denominations might be like, well, the Catholic Church just wastes their money on churches. It's not a waste, because there's an intentionality to it of helping us focus on God, helping us be closer to Him, and to realize that we are worshiping our King in those places. This is another place that this is actually Florence. Big part of the Renaissance that was a big influence to the whole world, because this is the biggest dome that was built at the time. It took hundreds of years to build it, and they couldn't figure out how to build it. So they hired Brunelleschi, he came up with this new idea, which basically you have this circle. It's like the Pantheon. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that too. But the very top of it is a circle, and there's like these pieces that are like built on top of each other to take the weight off of the center. And it was just really big technology at that time, and it influenced a lot of architecture to today. I'm sure the dome that we have at the cathedral is built the same way. It's much smaller. And this is actually one of my pieces that I did when I was in Florence. Yeah, that's like almost 10 years ago now. So I want to segue into art today. Before I get there though, I also want to mention music, just because I haven't really mentioned that. That is a big part of art too, and in the Catholic Church. So just a really quick one, but have you guys heard of Johann Sebastian Bach? Bach worked for the Catholic Church, and he was actually commissioned to write a new music for every single Mass. So just like that's an extraordinary big amount of music that he had to write. So just again, that influence of art in the Catholic Church too. So as you can see, our art today is still really similar in the Catholic Church. Like this is actually based on the Sacred Heart of Jesus, or the Divine Mercy, and the Sacred Heart. But you can see it still comes back from that icon in a way. There's still symbolism so that we can see like lilies. This is the Sacred Heart, the Immaculate Heart, and this heart of Joseph. You have the crown of thorns for Jesus and the crucifix. You have I think these are roses for because Mary is the mystical rose, and then you have Joseph, and he is symbolized by the lilies because he remained pure throughout the marriage with him and Mary. And then some other depictions Guadalupe holding, this is actually an artist that I follow today, and this is a really cool story of how Mary is holding her heart, and she's surrendering herself to God. And then just a portrait. This is digital art. So she's come a long way to where we are today, and can have Christ present in our lives, that beauty for Christ that Pope Benedict talked about. I'm going to share a little bit of my art. So I sometimes do religious art. And so this is St. Kateri, obviously Mary and the cathedral. And I've been influenced by, the icons and statues and architecture as well. But I do want to make it very clear that art doesn't have to be religious. This is also some of my art that is just to glorify God, to bring joy and peace to people. It doesn't, like I said, it doesn't have to be religious. It can just be something that is good and beautiful and speaks a message of truth. And I encourage you guys to find what your creative outlet is. Maybe you are an artist, or you write music, or you write poetry, or stories, or essays, whatever it may be. Or it might be that you're a consumer of those things, and you like to listen to good music, you like to look at good art, and you like to sing. Find what it is that you do, or what you want to, what beauty you're attracted to, what message that you want to consume, and find that relationship with God in that